Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Barnes, we've heard quite a bit from our Republican colleagues on the topic of sovereignty and why they believe that the Pillar 2 agreement threatens the United States sovereignty to enact tax laws. But isn't it true that each of the countries in the inclusive framework, including the United States of America, has the right to enact or not to enact domestic legislation that aligns with Pillar 2?
Thank you for the question. Yes, every country retains its authority, and it's an important point to note that there's not a one-size-fits-all. The OECD's agreement is trying to align the rules. It's not prescriptive to say you must do A, B, C, D, E. There's flexibility within the framework for how countries choose to adapt, and that's why modifying the U.S. GILTI rules may be sufficient for the U.S., even though another jurisdiction takes a different approach to aligning with the proposals under Pillar 2.
Thank you. And doesn't the fact that we're having this hearing today and the fact that the elected Biden administration has been negotiating with the OECD mean that we're not ceding our sovereignty?
Well, that certainly would be my view. Thank you. And again, I come back to what I said in the oral statement, which is in arbitration for tax disputes, other governments have said, that's a loss of my sovereignty, and the U.S. has said, no. You, as the sovereign, can choose to have certain disputes settled by arbitration, and that does not impede your sovereignty one bit.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barnes, again, many of my colleagues across the aisle seem to think the U.S. should abandon these OECD negotiations. As a matter of fact, one of the witnesses mentioned that too. I mentioned to the chairman that, that old saying that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think that might hold true here as well. In your view, which would be better for American businesses and American workers? Remaining at the table to ensure a fair outcome, or walking away from the table entirely?
Well, I'm a huge believer that we need to be at the table and our voices heard. One thing that's important, and I spent 4.5 years at the Treasury Department, one thing that's important to remember is that our voice is widely respected within the world. We've been a leader in developing international tax principles for a century, and our voice is heard. But if we walk away from Pillar 2, then our concerns will not be taken into account with nearly the same weight as if we're a player in the exercise.
Thank you. And thank you for pointing out the time you spent at Treasury. I think we have a very unique witness in you, Mr. Barnes. The fact that you've been at Treasury, you've been a player in negotiations such as these, you've been in the private sector, and you've been a tax consultant to many major corporations and entities. I think you bring a lot of expertise to the witness dais today. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.